NJLP.
All right,
All right,
start
here
now.
we go. Welcome to the NJLP candidate question and answer night with Chase Oliver. He is from Georgia. He was a former Senate candidate, and he's running for president in the Libertarian Party. And if you guys have any questions, or Chase, you want to say a few words and then maybe open it up?
Well, I just want to say thank you guys for having me. I look forward to speaking with y'all and taking your questions, and hopefully, as delegates are getting, coming to Washington D.C., I hope to be earning some support out of New Jersey. And I think our campaign is one that is showing the real energy we need to have in 2024 to really make strides and really build our party up. I call this a foundational election because so many people are sick and tired of the two-party system. Like 60% of voters say they're ready to vote for a third party, and we have to give them a landing. We have to give them a place to come to. And so what I want to do is I want to tap into each of those voters. I want to find their libertarian issue, bring them into the tent, and connect that issue with the greater libertarian philosophy. And that's because that's how I got into the party. I was an anti-war voter, and I was literally brought into a tent at the Atlanta Pride Festival. John Mons, who was running for governor, he was out there running for governor, waved me in, said, "Hey, if you're anti-war, this is the place for you," and connected me with the greater libertarian philosophy. And I'm so glad that he did. And that's what I want to do for millions and millions of voters. And I say I want to build our party foundation up so we can tear the state down. And I think those are worthy goals. I want to double our party's membership and maintain that number for at least the next 4 years. So whoever our nominee is in 4 years, they have the wind in their sails. I don't know about y'all, but I have libertarian burnout syndrome sometime where, you've been doing so many things, you've been spinning so many plates that you get tired. Well, imagine what we could do with twice as many members. And I think that's something we can look forward to, building ballot access in states so it's easier for libertarians to run for office, making major party status strides so we get primary access and other things that allow the media to pay more attention to us so the voters see us. And lastly, I want to identify winnable libertarian races that this presidential campaign can help people cross the finish line. And I think the metrics of this campaign speak for itself. We have the most number of volunteers, over 300, and almost, we're getting near 400 now at this point. We have donors in all 50 states, plus DC and Guam, or is it Puerto Rico? I can't remember which one it is. It's one of those. They can't vote in the election, but they can certainly support a presidential candidate. And, I think what we're looking for now is we're seeing a 50-state framework. I've traveled to almost all 50 states. I'm knocking Wyoming off on my next campaign leg. I'm hitting 4 states in 6 days. I'll be attending 2 state conventions, holding a meet and greet in Wyoming, as well as recording some content out there in Laramie. And then I'm heading to Illinois to start getting ballot access signatures so we can be a 50-state party. So I'm committed to that vision of growing our party. And I hope to answer any questions y'all have. And sorry I'm a little late. Like I said, I was doing a little housework. If you can see the plastic tarping behind me, it's about to be pollen season in Georgia. So we're doing what we can to prevent our outdoor furniture from being covered in the yellow stuff. And I kind of lost track of time there. So my bad, my apologies. But I'm happy to stay a little longer if there's questions that need to be answered. And with that, whoever got the first one, let's go for it.
Oh,
well, that's great. I don't see any hands up, so I'll just gonna start the conversation just to get things going. At the moment, we have 2 wars going on, proxy wars, if you want to call. We have an issue on the border. We have the non-aggression principle, anarchist and libertarian saying Jacob Hornberger's right. We have most of the other candidates not agreeing with him. We have what other big issues going on in the LP?
Well, let's just start with one of those. So, we got immigration, anarchy versus minarchy, or the wars. Which would you like me to kind of broach first?
I think I want to let's do the wars first. Do you want to start with the Ukraine, or do you want to start with Israel?
Well, let's just start with foreign policy in general, and I'll kind of work towards more specifics. And so it is a great first thing to talk about because it's the first thing that got me involved in politics was opposing war. I was in high school when 9/11 happened, And I started seeing people that I went to high school with being sent to go fight in wars in Afghanistan and then Iraq, which Iraq, if you remember the history, was clearly intelligence being used to manipulate the entire storyline of Iraq, which sent thousands of our troops to go fight and inevitably die in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so that's what got me started in politics, was opposing the war machine. And I didn't know about the Libertarian Party, so reflexively, I guess I was a Democrat who loved guns and hated taxes, which that got me a lot of weird looks. But I was happy to join people on the anti-war line. The first time I ever got tear gassed by my own government was opposing the war in Iraq out there in Washington, D.C. at a protest. So when I tell people I'm anti-war to the core, I mean it. That doesn't mean that I can't call out the fact that, yes, Vladimir Putin, he invaded Ukraine. If you can't say that, we're not, looking in real history. Now, what we can also say is that, NATO has long outlived its usefulness. The Soviet Union's long gone. We didn't need to be having NATO the way we do. We don't need to be entangling ourselves in these foreign alliances. And certainly we don't need to be contributing money to furthering the war in Ukraine. And certainly not now that we've already given hundreds of, over $100 billion. I think what we need to be doing in Ukraine is, if there's a military solution, Ukraine's general neighbors are going to have to take care of that. Poland, Germany, France, Western Europe, they need to be taking the lead if there's anything going on. But what we need to be doing is actually taking the lead on the humanitarian side of things. If you're somebody who wants to get out of the war zone, you should be able to come here as a refugee, honestly. And I think the best thing we can do to fight back against the Russian military without firing a single shot is offer amnesty to any person who's being conscripted against their will to fight in the war on either side. And what you're going to see is a lot of people in Russia, hopefully, abandoning the front line and wanting to come to the United States instead of freezing to death and possibly dying in Ukraine. Or freezing and possibly dying in Ukraine, not freezing to death and dying. That would be dumb. And so I oppose any kind of military solution, but I do think that there's a humanitarian, take we could have. If people want to come here and resettle, if there are organizations that want to help people resettle, we should allow people to come here and do that. That doesn't mean that we have to provide a welfare state. It does mean that we can provide a welcoming place for charities and other organizations to bring people in if they want to help sponsor them and get them started here. And certainly the amnesty from people being conscripted, because I oppose the draft even in our own country. And so I oppose military conscription anywhere. I think it's a human rights abuse to be forced to fight in a war. Sorry if you guys can hear my cat. He's being ridiculously stupid right now. And then as far as Israel, October 7th was disgusting. It was. Seeing 1,400 people killed by Hamas is rightfully terrible. It's like their 9/11. But just like we should have examined the motivations and the things that created the conditions for our 9/11 to happen, so should we also look and examine the motivations that caused October the 7th to happen in Israel. It didn't happen in a vacuum. There's a reason why terrorism and hatred were able to take root there. Now, that doesn't excuse the violence. It's just giving you the conditions of what Gaza is going under. And now Gaza is being blown up. It's being airstriked. Tens of thousands of people are being killed. And what I would call a war crime. I don't think what Israel is doing is measured or in any way justified based on what they've done. Now, if they were being more surgical, more precise, that you can make an excuse for that. And I wish on October 8th, the international community had gone to Israel and said, you know what? If you're going to airstrike Gaza, this is going to look really bad. You're going to ruin your credibility. It's going to create turmoil into your neighbors. It's going to inspire more violence in the Palestinians. It could possibly lead to a world war if this gets really over the edge. You need to not do this. Just like I wish someone in the international community had gone to us on 9/12/2001 and said, a global war on terror where you're going to fight for 20 years and spend billions of dollars, and you're going to take out the Taliban to replace them with the Taliban 2 decades later after thousands of your people are killed, and you're going to be guarding poppy fields, you're going to be doing all kinds of shady stuff in the Middle East. That's not worth it. We should be doing the same thing to Israel instead of just blindly backing them and saying, yeah, whatever armament you want, just take it. Of course, I oppose all foreign aid and all foreign military aid. coming from the United States. I don't think it's right to be doing what we're doing. I personally believe in a two-state solution, but I'm not Israel and I'm not Palestine. So as far as the United States, we can't have a stake in that. I think a two-state solution is probably the most workable thing that would lead to peace in the long term. But again, I'm not either of those parties, and the United States shouldn't be forcing one way or the other. They're going to have to figure that out for themselves, and we need to take a backseat. Non-interventionist foreign policy, because all we're doing is making it worse. And I hope that answered that question.
Yes, good answer to the questions. But one other question for you too is, what is your stance on Ron Paul's former HR 45, the withdrawal of the United States from the United Nations? I'm not sure who sponsors it now. I think it's Thomas Massie. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would support that for a couple of reasons. First, the United Nations just doesn't work. It is an ineffective organization. Any organization that gives veto power to just 5 nations where they can just veto anything isn't one that believes in uniting anything. It believes in, top-down, centralized government from these 5 parties that were just arbitrarily chosen post-World War II. It's not the world we live in anymore. It can create more turmoil. And frankly, again, we need to remove ourselves from these kinds of entangling alliances that cause far more harm than good. And yeah, I would seek to support that. If it came to my desk as president, I would sign it.
Case, how old are you?
I am 38 years old. I will be 39 on election day. That is exactly half Donald Trump's age and less than half Joe Biden's age. When I say I want to speak for liberty for new generation, I mean it.
Okay. Because I'm kind of, I think you got, a great big set of balls and some education to do what you're doing. Before I would do what you're doing, I'm looking for an 8-year internship. So trying myself to figure out the vice president, getting on a ticket. And I realized that the most powerful, what you said about war, I will tell you, this country should have been in 4 wars and 4 wars only. American Revolution, World War I, World War II, and I guess we had to have the Civil War, and that's it. My dad, I was conceived on December 31st, 1967, before my dad went off to war. And it made me a Cowboy fan because it was the Ice Bowl. But yeah, so against the wars, and then you mentioned immigration. You know what? This is the country of immigrants. I would open the borders. Okay.
So let me tell you a little bit about my immigration policy. I support the Ellis Island model of immigration for the 21st century. I was in Ellis Island recently, and noted. But I was in Ellis Island recently, and I learned that 40% of the people in this country have at least one relative that came through the registry room, a direct relative. So that's 4 in 10 of us can trace our ancestry through that one room. The last time we had major explosion of immigration was the late 19th and early 20th century. And it led to a massive explosion in terms of prosperity for this country. And so I think we need to be doing the exact same thing. I went to the border. I talked to business owners who were frustrated in El Paso because they said, hey, man, I would love to hire some of these immigrants. I'm sure they want to work, but they can't because they're waiting for their asylum court date and they have no legal documentation to work while they wait. So they're stuck on the city services and on the churches and other charities to help these people. They want to be self-sufficient too. They don't like being in shelters. They don't like the waiting. They wish they could just go and get to work. And so what I say is we should open our ports of entry to say anybody who wants to come through, you declare who you are, go through a quick background check, because we want to make sure somebody who's not a wanted criminal somewhere that requires us to exercise the extradition treaties we have with other nations, or somebody who's clearly dangerous, who's got a really bad record. Hey, we don't want that element. Somebody who's we don't want to, someone who's committed lots of crimes of force and violence against people to be just waltzing right in.
Yeah.
You can then come right in. And if you have a problem, say you're wanted for a crime or you have a record that we're questioning, you can then apply for asylum and say there are there's other circumstances, extenuating circumstances that require you to be in front of a judge. But basically, that's it. And that would free up so much of this process. It would allow so many people just to go right in, right out. And of course, I live in Georgia. We have the largest industry is agriculture in my state. And so what I would love to see is many of these workers could just come during planting and harvesting and go back home. Right now, they can't go back. And so they come during planting and harvesting, they collect their money, they send that back home. And for the rest of the year, they're living on welfare services. They're living on charity. And I wish they could be more self-sufficient or go back home for themselves, and that's what the Ellis Island model would provide. It would really open up this process. It would really let the free market take the reins instead of the government, minus the government doing what it should be doing, which is protecting us from, from people who would be trying to do us harm, or exercising the treaties that we do have with other nations to extradite people who are wanted, provided they don't claim asylum and then have to go through that process. So I think this is a clear model that would work and that we could pass through both houses of Congress and finally fix this issue if we just had somebody to put it forward and we had somebody with the balls to sign it, as you said. So thank you for that question. And
I can follow up. I can follow up a little bit. On my third marriage, and finally took 3 to do it right. My first marriage was a literally mutual breakup. I married and lost the biggest liberty in New Jersey and have severe visitation issues with my now 14-year-old daughter. And my third wife is from Brazil. And, if there was a wall, she wouldn't be here. She's been here 5 years and she's not legal. So I totally agree, with what you're doing there. I think you can solve a lot.
Unfortunately, there is a wall.
Listen, I can tell you, first of all, El Paso, when you're talking crime, how it changed. Okay. All you have to do is, people think libertarians are pot smoking idiots. Okay. All you have to do is expand that to the war on drugs. And the way you end the war on drugs is you legalize. Cocaine used to be in your soda. If you're choosing to take it, we're going to tax you and we're going to use the money to help you. If you just legalize like marijuana and cocaine, the gang violence goes away. The prison system goes away.
Well, I'll give you a fun fact, and then I'll give you a fun fact about the war on drugs, and I'll take another question from someone else here. But so we now live in a country where over 50% of the country, now 53% of the country, thanks to Ohio legalizing recently, now live in a state with legalized adult use recreational cannabis. And this is something that I think libertarians need to rightfully own as a victory, because we've been leading the way on this since the day our party was founded. So since 1971, we've been leading the way on cannabis and on other drugs being legalized. And now we're seeing where a majority of Americans live in a state where they can use cannabis recreationally as an adult if they so choose. It's being destigmatized. It's no more controversial than a glass of wine. I've personally used it because I got hit by a car in 2019, ruptured 3 vertebrae in my neck and back, and used it as opposed to opiates to treat the pain that was, really, really bad as I worked through physical therapy. And, it was years of getting better. And now we're also seeing some states legalizing psilocybin, MDMA therapies. These things are really great for treating things, especially PTSD, but veterans can't really access this because it's federally not legal. So there is that. So, but if anybody's got a question, feel free to throw your hand up and ask away, you guys. Thank you for your question, sir.
Yeah,
no problem.
You can ask a question next.
Thank you. I know that a while back I watched the debates with you, Chase, and this was a while back, and I believe that when the question came up regarding transitioning of children, of minors, I believe your response was, correct me if I'm wrong, was that it's up to the parents to decide. And I just wanted, I guess, for myself, a bit of a clarification on that. Do you support? Are you okay? I mean, I understand it's not a federal issue, but surgeries for minors if they want to transition, and would that also would you be okay with puberty blockers as well if a child wanted to transition? So that's
Yeah. So
the question.
so thanks for allowing me to expand, because just saying the parents decide is not quite the totality of it. I do believe in surgery for over 18. I believe surgery is something that is permanent. That should be waiting until you yourself are the adult. But I also believe this for all cosmetic surgery. I don't believe you should be getting a nose job in high school or a boob job when you're, 16 years old and you want your chest to be bigger. Like, I think those kinds of things can wait. I also frankly oppose circumcision outside of the realm of religious exemption for that very reason. So I'm pretty consistent on bodily autonomy waiting until you're an adult for surgery. When it comes to other medical therapies, I do believe in listening to parents, doctors, and the patient who is that person. Now, when you look at the totality of this, that means there's 74 million young people in this country. Out of that 74 million, there's about 300,000 who are between the ages of 10 and 19 who have expressed long-term gender dysphoria. And so between 10 and 19, there's a few 18 and 19-year-olds in there, but generally that's young people under the age of 18. Of that 300,000, only 4,000 have accessed medical intervention in the terms of puberty blockers or hormone therapy. And so we're looking at a fraction of a fraction. Like, this is a small number of people. And when it comes to that small number of people, I do believe they are listening to their doctors for the most part. Now, there's Munchausen by proxy. There's other abuse and neglect that can certainly be looked at, and those children should be absolutely defended from those things. But I've spoken to families with trans children. There's a trans boy who 16 years old, who had just started hormone therapy the previous few months, right before Iowa, where they were living, outlawed it. And now they have to travel an hour and a half out of the state to access the medical care that their doctor had determined was best for them. And they're not just their doctor, but also their medical healthcare professional. And the parents who had sat in them with, discussed this, gone through the back and forth, asked about the side effects. They're trying to be as informed as they can. They're frustrated that they have to travel out of state now. Now, here's what I've always believed in when it comes to parents. Parents, and when I ask them about this, I always say, do you have, I bet you have unconditional love for your kids. And all the parents go, yeah, man, I would do anything for my kid. I'd fight, I'd die for my kid. If I had to right now, I'd take a bullet. That's how most parents are. They have that unconditional love, which means to me, they're going to be the best advocate for their children. They're going to do whatever they can to see their kid be happy, survive, and thrive. Even if it means figuring things out that they don't understand, trying to understand issues that their kids are going through, learning themselves on the job, because everybody knows being a parent is on the job training all the time. You never have it all figured out, regardless of what your mother-in-law might say. She didn't have it figured out either. And that's just the truth of it. And so we have to trust these people who have unconditional love and are just trying to figure it out for their kids, have better advocacy for their children than random bureaucrats in the State House or in Washington, D.C., who don't know their kids and don't know what their kids are going through. And so while I believe it's rare, and it probably should be rare, medical intervention, I do believe in letting parents and medical practitioners make that determination, and not the State House or the federal, or the federal government. And thank you for allowing me to expound upon that issue.
Okay, good answer. Dan Kraus, you can ask the next question.
How you doing? So we have in this campaign heard a lot of people ask that, oh, well, you're not going to make it. Why are you running? That kind of thing, because of, libertarians. But I would like to ask, kind of a two-parter, but probably not. But assuming you are asked down in the seat of power, you're the president, you got to work with a Congress. What is the one piece of legislation, if you got it passed, you'd be happy with your time in the office if you got it passed?
So beyond a balanced budget, which I think is, that's kind of a cop out, because that's like funding everything. But if I could pass one kind of legislation, I would support a federal Defend the Guard legislation that would say that if Congress is not declaring war, I, as president, cannot activate the National Guard. It is a power that would limit the power of the president. And I believe in that. I believe that if I were elected president, one of the things I can do is guarantee you this: if I can make you no other promise, the power of the presidency will be weaker the day I leave office than the day that I took office. Because so much of what we have is federal encroachment, and so much of that is part of the war machine that has existed. My entire adult life, we've seen it expanded since 9/11, and it's something that we need to pull back on. And one of the ways we can do that directly is pass federal Defend the Guard legislation that backs up these states who are passing it right now, like Idaho. I'm heading there tomorrow. They're putting Defend the Guard in their legislature right now. And here in Georgia, it just passed the Senate committee. We're looking to get it on the House floor so we can get a bill voted on in Georgia. But I think anything that I can do to reduce the power of the president to declare war unilaterally is a win, not just for me, but it will limit the power of future presidents. Because as much as we would like me to be president forever, even if I'm elected to a second term, I only get 8 years in office. And we have to think long term about how we can limit the power of government in the long term. It can't be just good enough like, oh, a libertarian got elected and he's doing a great job of governing. No, a libertarian got elected and he's reducing the power of the state each and every day and looking for ways to do that. And so if I could work with Congress to bring the power of the National Guard back to the states unless war is declared, I think that would be a really good win, limiting the power of the presidency going forward.
Okay, good answer too, right there. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, just kind of on top of that.
Go ahead, Kendall.
As I said, I would want an internship, and you weren't on. I ran against Donald Payne Jr. in 10th District in New Jersey 2 years ago, and I'll be running against Nancy Macy down here in the 1st District of South Carolina. But as vice president, and with my background CPA and an attorney, what I would like to do is take AI and go through the 14,000 executive orders and overturn all of them and let the legislation do what they need to do, because most of the executive orders are unconstitutional. And I believe what you've just done there is you've put the United States back on a gold standard.
Well, I think limiting the power of executive order is certainly important. And I think, if I were elected president, I'd obviously like to do whatever I could to do that. This is one of the things that I think speaks to one of the important things about wanting to run as a libertarian. If you do get elected, that you do actually have to work with Congress, as Dan mentioned. You can't just govern unilaterally. You can't just, executive order everything. You can't just, govern by, I got elected, so therefore I can just do whatever the hell I want. Because frankly, if you do govern that way via executive order, it can all be undone fairly quickly by subsequent presidents. And so this would speak to both what I would seek to do is remove all of those executive orders, go through them one by one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also you wouldn't want to add any new ones to that. You'd have to work within the confines of your office, which actually makes the job of being president far more difficult than any Republican or Democrat have made in a long time. And certainly, I imagine if a libertarian were somehow elected president, that Congress would finally actually start doing its job in providing oversight. Something tells me that, they don't mind not providing oversight when there's Republicans and Democrats. But let me just say this: if a libertarian is elected president, they will be looking through every nook and cranny to try to impeach that person, remove them from power as quickly as possible, provided that you don't have an even more libertarian vice presidential candidate. Somebody mentioned vice president earlier. You mentioned that as well. And so when it comes to, I imagine this question will come up from somebody, so let me go ahead and answer it. I'm looking at all the candidates who are currently running for president as a possible running mate, minus one who's already canceled themselves out. Jacob Hornberger said he would not ever want to run for VP. Cool. I support his effort in that. But the other candidates who are running, I'm looking at them because if I win the nomination, I imagine many of them will drop down and want to run for VP. And I'm right now kind of vetting who I think would be best to complement me at the top of the ticket. Haven't really nailed that down yet, but there's lots of good people. I actually got stuck in a car with Lars Mapstead and Charles Belay for 6.5 hours driving from Massachusetts to New York last week. So learned a lot about them, just, with car ride conversations. I've known Mike Termott since Reno. I met him at the Reno convention, known him quite a while. And so all of these people, I'm looking at what would be best to complement. So hopefully we come up with a great running mate. But I am currently background checking all of those folks But yeah, so what else we got to talk about, folks?
Well, I'll do one last.
Hold on, Kendall, can you let Chris Fox go?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna do one last thing, but that's fine.
Chris, can you?
Yeah, hey guys. Hey, good to see you again, Chase. Um, I was actually at the debate in New York where you were up with Jill Stein and a whole bunch of socialists.
Yeah.
It was a really good experience. Um, one of the things that did come up was energy and your approach to energy, making the United States a little bit more energy independent. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of expand on that and with this audience here.
Yeah. So when the topic of energy came up, I said, I'm tired of government picking winners and losers with regards to energy. I think the thing that we subsidize the most with our taxpayer dollars is actually coal, natural gas, other carbon-based energies, which, I don't support really subsidizing that either. I think they can survive on their own, or they can fall on their own. The same with regards to renewables, but I also think we need to untie nuclear energy. It is massively overregulated to the point of where it's not competitive in the marketplace. We need to remove some of this undue regulation around nuclear. It's much safer than it used to be. It has a smaller logistical footprint than there used to be. You can even use these new, the saltwater what is it, light water thorium reactors. You can use using spent fuel. So like the modern nuclear technology is far better than what and it was Jill Stein who was arguing against on that debate stage would have you believe. I believe her talking points on nuclear power about as old as 3 Mile Island is. And that's just not where nuclear power is these days. And if you're somebody who believes in protecting the earth, the amount of land you would have to use to create solar energy for one nuclear power plant would be just so much of a larger footprint. It would just be astronomical if you compare it to the size of that nuclear power footprint. And then the last thing I would like to talk about, and particularly in the Northeast, you guys know that heating costs more. You guys have to deal with natural gas. And you're importing natural gas from overseas because of this thing called the Jones Act. There's a huge, bountiful amount of domestic natural gas that could be getting shipped up to you via vessel, but we don't have those because if you're not familiar with the Jones Act, it prevents U.S. port to U.S. port transmission of goods unless you're in a U.S. flag, U.S. crude, U.S. built ship. There's not a lot of those, and there isn't any liquefied natural gas tankers at all. And so you're now importing natural gas from Europe instead of getting the cheaper American natural gas brought to you because the Jones Act makes that natural gas from America too expensive. And so if we ended the Jones Act, it would lower heating costs for the Northeast for folks like yourselves. But also, if we just removed all these subsidies and untied nuclear energy, we would see so much growth in the nuclear and renewable sector as we stop subsidizing carbon out the wazoo. And lastly, Jill Stein had a problem with nuclear waste. She said, well, what do you do with the waste? First off, all the nuclear waste we've ever created can fit in your average size Walmart supercenter these days. So it's not a huge footprint in terms of nuclear waste. And also, you can actually grab that waste and move it places. You can't really do that with a lot of carbon-based fuels and the waste they produce. And lastly, I would look to hopefully see, I'm from the maritime shipping industry. I worked in logistics for a long time for a company called Hapag-Lloyd. I would like to see one day nuclear-powered vessels moving our containers around the world because that's ultimately a way to reduce pollution. And then the greatest polluter in the United States is the United States military. Once again, removing the war machine, removing ourselves from these wars, bringing troops home, closing these bases would reduce our carbon output and have a cleaner world and a world with less war in it. So all of those are things that are part of my energy strategy that hopefully going forward we can discuss, especially back in a debate stage with Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Would love to see what those guys think about it.
So you're saying we should use more nukes?
More nuclear power, less nuclear weapons. Yes.
Okay, good question. Let me ask one question. Currently, traditional family values are under constant attack, and I was wondering what you would do to support the family unit and parental rights. Constantly, the school board.
Yeah. So.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So first, one of the things I would do is return you mentioned school boards there at the end. One of the things that I would seek to do is remove the state from education altogether. I would put that power back in the hands of parents. Federally, I would like to remove the Department of Education completely. and then return that back to the states. And now what we're seeing in a lot of states is funding students, not systems. So instead of funding a school system, a school board, a county school system, if they're going to tax you and fund anything, they just give the money to the students and the parents directly. I would see if that's going to be a model that gets used, I would advocate that it has minimal regulation around it, other than, supporting kids to not be abused or neglected in school. Obviously, we want to make sure they're going to a safe environment. But when it comes to curriculum, when it comes to the teaching models that are used, when it comes to the administration at the schools and the way they are set up, whether it's a religious school or whatever, that needs to be up to the parent. And anything we can do to facilitate that, I would support ultimately. And then when it comes to parental rights, if you see the work that You Are the Power is doing with Spike in my home state of Georgia, he's dealing with a family whose kids have been taken away from them by DFACS. It's ridiculous, these kinds of things. Not that I don't support the right of kids to be protected from abuse and neglect. It legitimately happens, and there are good people who legitimately seek to help those kids. But I believe the state is way too powerful in relation to parents when it comes to what's going on. Way, way, way skewed in favor of the state over parents. And we need to rectify this by removing some of this legislation, particularly around Social Security. And there are some other federal codes that you could reduce. But when you get down to the state level, it really is the family courts that exist in each state, the corruption that exists within these, the fact that there are some of these judges, there's some of these doctors who, they claim neglect, they claim abuse when none exists. And there's a profit motive for some of these people. Like, there needs to be more oversight.
Yep. You're breaking up a little bit.
Gone.
You're a correct.
Oh,
Yeah. We'll just hang tight for a little bit. It seems like Chase, maybe he lost power.
I was in school. Of course, that was at
we
least.
can't hear you.
Yeah, you kind of broke up.
At the community level, not level.
Somebody have his phone number to text him?
No, I could text his, hold on. I'll send an email.
Let's see. Looks like he dropped.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to drop out on you. What I was basically saying is that anything I can do to reduce the state's involvement in your kids' lives, reduce the power of the state over you as a sovereign adult who's peaceful, who just wants to see your kid succeed, I'm all for that. Really at every level. I don't know where I dropped out, so I didn't want to repeat all that.
You dropped out of judge corruption.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I do not want anybody raising my kids anymore. All right, next up, Ken Kaplan, can you ask a question? And then we'll do Ken Lewin after that.
Hi, Chase. Thanks for joining us tonight. I wanted to ask you about taxation. In the past, some libertarians have said that the federal government could be run just using existing excise taxes and the income tax could be eliminated entirely. Do you think that's realistic? What would be your tax plan or untaxed plan?
I would like for that to be something that we could do in 4 years. Realistically, there's a lot of the state we would have to reduce to make that, deficit neutral. I would like to reduce taxes at every level. Like if I were president, I would ask for a balanced budget. If the budget isn't balanced, I would veto it. I would seek to reduce the state from there. Once we get a balanced budget, we can cut, and keep cutting that down and reducing the amount of taxation in all of our lives. I would like to remove all subsidies and deductions and lower the overall tax rate so it flattens itself out generally, because it does benefit those who have the connections to, the ability to read through our very extensive tax code and find all those nooks and crannies. I would really simplify the tax code as much as possible at every level. Anything that could reduce the impact of the state on your wallet would be a worthy goal. Ultimately, ideally, though, and I don't even know if we can get to this in 4 or 8 years, but ideally, I'm a minarchist. I would like the state to be so small it's voluntarily funded. not even excise taxes, that people are able to say, hey, we want to have courts, so we'll put money towards these courts. We want to have law enforcement, we'll put money towards law enforcement. We want to have a military, we'll put money towards the military. That's the ideal. Do I think we're going to get there in my 4 or 8 years if I'm elected? Probably not. But it's worth keeping that North Star in mind as we just chip away, because we did not build this authoritarian state that we live in a day. It did not come in a vacuum. We didn't just go from zero to nothing, zero to where we are. It grew and grew and grew. And we have to chip it down piece by piece by piece. And this is why I say election is so important about building our party's foundation, about building ourselves up so we can tear the state down, because it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to happen over a series of decades. I'm looking to start this process of building our party up in a way we have it in a long time, with membership and with energy and enthusiasm. Because if we don't, we're never going to have that opportunity to tear down the state piece by piece, including taxation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, Kendall.
Ken, you're running for Senate, if I'm not mistaken?
That's correct.
Okay,
Hey,
great.
Ken, if you're running for Senate, I just want to give you a free plug. My page has an endorsement tab. If you're looking to be endorsed, go to my page, votechaseoliver.com, click on the endorsement tab, fill it out. We'll schedule a call for us to sit down and talk. Really, I'm looking for what your win number is, what your issues are, and we can discuss those things, and hopefully we can get endorsement out and increase visibility of your race, particularly if it's a ballot access race, but really any candidates who's on the call. I want to hear from you and see what we can do to support your races.
Thank you.
All right,
Didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
no problem. So, Chase, when you're doing consideration, I'm not sure how the VP is selected. I have a lot of similar ideas to you. I'm a CPA IRS guy. I've been abused by the New Jersey courts, and I can speak to a lot of your things. So I'm running here in the 1st district. You came on after that. After the convention, I'm trying to make an arrangement. Starting now, I'm going to try and use Citadel College, where Nancy Macy graduated as the first woman graduate. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm running for the state level, House and Senate, and walk from Hilton Head to Charleston. And when I get there on the 4th of July, say, you know what, maybe the House of Representatives isn't that bad. So trying to get media buzz like that. So I just have my website up, LuddenForLiberty.com, and my phone number's on there if you want to speak at any time.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you running locally. Let me just say this. I've run for Congress and then for statewide and Senate. Running is no joke. It is a serious endeavor. I encourage you to get some walking shoes and knock on those doors. It's what I did when I ran for Senate. So every day when I ran for Senate in 22, luckily I had a remote job. It was based in Washington State, so I didn't have to clock into work until noon, my time out here in Georgia. Now, with that, I had a few hours each morning where I would wake up in the morning, I'd get ready, I'd go out to a neighborhood, and I would knock on at least 100 doors, or flyer. Sometimes I would knock, sometimes I would flyer. Depends on the morning, depends on how much coffee I had in me or whatever, what my get up and go was. But I touched base with, knocked on or flyered 3,000 doors the year that I ran for office. And in the neighborhoods where I did that, I actually had a higher vote turnout. Somebody did a county, a political science student took county maps, and they measured what my percentage was in each counties. In the states that I knocked on doors, I had a higher county or a higher count percentage wise. So that works. So I want to say thank you for running, and thank you to anybody who's running as a candidate. It is not a joke. And trust me, I thought, hey, running for Senate, jumping up to president.
How many votes did you get?
I got 81,000 votes in Georgia, 2.1% of the vote, enough to force a runoff. And
yeah, okay, awesome. You're the one who decided the election. You're the bad guy.
Yeah, I was a bad guy. I was the most hated man in Georgia for 4 weeks because I caused that runoff and forced everyone to have politics over their Thanksgiving, and they had all their campaign commercials for 4 more weeks. Though I do say I'm a job creator, because a lot of the people who work in media and marketing, they got 4 extra weeks at the gig. So I guess I was a 4-week job creator. But yeah, so
but my touching people, my touching people is going 90 miles.
I did want to answer one more thing though. You did mention how does the VP get selected? That happens at convention, and technically, I don't pick. Who are the delegates, you will pick. 4 years ago, I kind of thought I was working on John Mond's campaign. I thought it was going to be Jorgensen, John Mond's, and lo and behold, you delegates, we got Spike Cohen. Now I love Spike too. Spike was a wonderful VP candidate. It was a surprise to those of us on the Mond's campaign, but we rolled with it, and that's what we have to do. The delegates pick. So, who's got another question while I cough my head off?
Dan Kraus has a question.
Well, with the cough, this might actually be a little interesting to answer. So something we haven't heard on the campaign trail a lot is one of the key sources of power that the United States actually uses on the world stage, which is trade. Specifically in relation to China and the Southeast Asian area, which has seen a lot of turmoil and a lot of trade increases and is the largest population of humans on the planet. How do you see our trade policy when you are actually the president?
Yeah, so I'm a free trade warrior. I see the power of markets. One of the things that I always say to people is that I have zero fear over war with China because I see how interconnected our economies are working in the logistics industry. I think all of that is a bunch of saber rattling from, our defense contractors and from China wanting to seem big and bad. But the truth is when we apply free trade, what we do is we export our values in addition to our products. And ultimately that liberalizes the trade policies of the world. And, there are people who want to try fighting a trade war. They don't work. Protectionism will not work. Tariffs will not work to stop China. What will stop China, people go, well, they're manipulating their currency. Well, yeah, they can only do that so long before they tank themselves. And as long as we keep trading and we keep being open and honest and moving our goods around the world, we'll outlast that. They will eventually, the bill will come due for that kind of stuff. They can't do it forever. And so what I would say is you starve that beast out. You just keep, you keep on keeping on. And with that, I would look to increase removal of trade barriers, like you said, particularly Southeast Asia. I think Malaysia is an area where we need to look at and see what the potential is for trade there. And then in regards to developing marketplaces, I don't think that the government is the best to decide that via development packages or foreign aid. What I encourage people to do is actually invest in microlending. It's something that I've done in the past that I thought is actually great. If you're not familiar, you take a small sum of money and you loan it out to somebody in the developing world interest-free. They then apply that to their business, their trade, their education, whatever, what have you, and they pay that back interest-free. And what you're doing is you're directly injecting capital into these developing marketplaces so that they can grow and thrive, and hopefully one day be exporting goods to your marketplace. And that's the ultimate goal that we want to see with development in the market, not giving foreign aid or giving these development packages to foreign governments who then pick winners and losers via bribes or other, washing down of our money where, you give them $1 and you get back a dime. So I think a much better thing to encourage is actually individual investment into the developing world via capital investment, or actually starting a business in the developing world, partnering with local entrepreneurs in these places and spurning the capitalist model around the world.
Okay. Good answer. Do we have any more questions? Okay.
I
got
can't hear you, Paul. Can everybody hear Paul, or is it just me?
I just heard him. I just
Can
heard
you hear me?
Paul.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Paul.
Okay. All
But
right,
it's like a Verizon commercial. He asked if anyone else has any questions. Throw a hand up, y'all.
all
I'm
right,
sorry. I muted myself for a moment there. I just want to invite you, if you want to do anything in South Carolina, I'm here in Charleston, that if you wanted to come physical or if you want to set something up virtually, I can make that happen for you.
So you're South Carolina by way of New Jersey?
Yeah, my family moved down here.
I love
My
it.
wife.
I've been to Charleston a few times. Next time I'm there, I will make sure to reach out for you, sir.
It's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
It is.
So if you want,
Let me just say this, and you can attest to this, being in the South. I'm from the South. Our winters are more mild. The summers are like hell. I don't know which you'd rather have. I have not lived through a New Jersey winter. I don't think I want to. At
That's
this point,
bad.
I'm from the South so bad, I would freeze to death. But yeah, if anybody's
I'm
got any
worried-
last minute questions, I will.
I'm
welcome
worried about
those,
the
and then I will-
humidity, but that's it. So,
Yeah,
but if you want to
prepare
do
for it,
something
sir.
like this with South Carolina, let me know. I can set up a Zoom call too.
I believe we're going to be doing town halls with a lot of states. South Carolina, I know I've done one earlier, but I'll probably end up doing something again in South Carolina because half my campaign staff is in the state. So there's a good chance you'll get me out there again.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because whatever number of I don't know what the delegates work, but they decided them in November, but they're going to reshuffle to see who's really going to go.
Yep.
So,
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you want to have any closing statements if no one else has any questions or?
Absolutely. I would love to just say thank you guys for the opportunity. I look forward to building this party up with a positive, powerful campaign. I hope you can see the difference in the way that I run for office. One of the things that I just do not do is I try not to take down other libertarians. If I have to run for president and attack other libertarians doing this, I'm doing it wrong. I need to save my powder, keep it dry for the state. And so I try to, as best I can, run a positive, forward-looking campaign that pushes our values out in a way that can resonate with people who are just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because that's how I got in the door, man. I was so sick and tired of Barack Obama claiming to be anti-war, getting the Nobel Peace Prize, and then doing nothing to stop the warfare state. And it drove me right literally into the tent of the Libertarian Party. I want our tent to be wide open to so many people who are ready to see the state get out of their lives and whatever it is. You know, are you tired of the warfare state and our tax money bombing kids overseas? Welcome home to liberty. Are you tired of seeing the immigrants who could get here and get to work and start lives themselves? Instead, they're being stuck with government red tape and BS. Welcome to liberty. Are you tired of eminent domain, whether it's building a wall on our southern border, a pipeline through your backyard, or interrupting tribal sovereignty for indigenous people who have just wanted to come here and live? Welcome to liberty. Whatever your issue is, there's a libertarian issue in you. Let's connect that issue with the greater philosophy of liberty. That's what I want to do with millions of voters. And with this, we can grow the party together. We can really see a new influx of voters, members, and with that, we have new activists, new donors, new door knockers. And so that way we can get rid of that burnout that some of us feel all the time. We can welcome some new blood in the family, bring them in, be nice to them. Say, hey, man, let's bring you to freedom. Let's talk about what freedom can mean for each and every person in this country if we just embraced it and fought back against the state, whether it's the left wing or the right wing. It's not about left versus right. It's about right versus wrong. You own yourself. And if you're not committing force, fraud, coercion, theft, or violence, your life is your life, your body is your body, your business is your business, and your property is your property. That's the message I'm putting out to voters. I encourage each and every one of you who are delegates to support me in DC. And those of you who want to get involved in the campaign can do so right now by going to votechaseoliver.com. Go to my website. You can sign on as a supporter, as a volunteer. We'd love to have you. You can get onto our email list if you want to see what we're doing. And we would love to have you as a donor supporter. We do need your help to travel across the country. We have a donor network of all 50 states, DC, and now the territories. But we can always use more help as we do this. We are growing ourselves. We're going to be over $100,000 raised by the time we hit convention. Now, let me say this. We are raising more money than any of the other candidates. A lot of other candidates are spending more money than we are. That's because we know how to hit dollar for dollar, pound for pound, and punch above our weight. And that's the kind of fiscal responsibility we need from a campaign that's going to be competing with the Republicans and Democrats. I forced a runoff in Georgia with $20,000, the price of a used car. I put down a $250 million duopoly election and made them have to get started and do it all over again. That's the kind of energy, that's the kind of responsibility, and that's the kind of campaign we can build in 2024 if you're willing to do it with me. Again, go to votechaseoliver.com.
Okay.
And I thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And I will sign off this meeting the same way I do every meeting, wishing every one of you out there peace, love, and liberty.
Okay, thank you very much, Chase.
Thank you, guys.
We appreciate taking the time, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed the meeting. And we look forward to seeing you at the convention.
I look forward to seeing all of y'all. God bless.